Hi everyone, it's MJ from Bible Intelligence, and in this video we're going through Revelation chapter 4, and we're going to go into a lot of detail, so prepare yourself for quite a long video, because this is the instance where John is taken into heaven and we get a glimpse of the spiritual realm. Now, what I'm going to be doing in this video is getting AI to assist me not only with understanding concepts, but also to visualize them. So let's start off with heaven. If we just went to the AI and we gave it a couple of prompts, and these are the first three things that come to my head when I think of heaven: paradise, eternity, and holiness, we're going to see what type of images the AI generates. We're then going to come with a second prompt where we're just going to type in heaven and see what happens there. And then the third one, we're going to say a celestial realm where the angels and God dwell. Now, we're doing this because when we start reading through Revelations chapter 4, we are going to be using the AI to generate images on the things that are written in this book. And for those of you who know, Revelations is filled with imagery, so this should be a lot of fun. We're also going to be using ChatGPT to help us understand the meaning of specific concepts. So that said, let's jump straight into it. So this is our first image that we get generated, and this is with, the tags of paradise, eternity, and holiness. And I did it a few times and we got, the following images, and they all had these things in common: this lush, beautiful background, birds with four wings, and it really did look like a nice place to be in. Then when I just typed in heaven, we got more of the clouds. Interesting that we're seeing a bridge. That's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But again, it has this lush Garden of Eden kind of vibe to it. There was also this image that came up with heaven, very much a staircase, or sort of, is it a staircase? Is it a bridge going into the light with clouds up there in the sky? And then when I said pure celestial realm where God and the angels dwell, we started to see something a little bit scary. I'm not going to lie, this one was a bit scary, but we're going to see that some of these elements are going to reappear in Revelations, especially seeing all the angelic hosts. This one is lacking a throne, which will become more central, but it does have these fire lamps in the background, which again will pop up later. This image here, we had like an angel at the forefront. And then this one here I thought was quite interesting because it's kind of bringing up a theme that we only see much later in the book of Revelations when it refers to the whole city of gold in the New Jerusalem. So that was quite an interesting one to pick up. Now, while we read through it, we want to provide some commentary. So I'm going to do that by comparing what we read with other Bible verses. And you're going to see a lot from Isaiah, Ezekiel, Micaiah, who's found in Kings, Daniel, Zechariah, Paul, and a couple of other places in the Bible. And what we also want to do is, like I say, look at these key terms, either use the AI to help us generate images and to ask ChatGPT to give us possible meanings. So that said, let's read through and start having a little bit of fun with it. So let's go. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, "After these things I saw, and behold, a door opened in heaven. And the first voice that I heard, a voice as of a trumpet speaking with me, one saying, 'Come up hither, and I will show thee the things which must come to pass hereafter.'" So the first thing I want to look at is this concept of a door. So we've got a door, we've got our image of the door opening up in heaven. And what I like about the concept of a door is, if we were to look at other Bible verses, we see that Jesus is associated with a door. We've got this verse here that says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you." Now that's Matthew 7 verse 7. We've also got Revelations chapter 3, which we've just gone through, which says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me." Or how about this verse where Jesus literally says, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved." And we're seeing this in John 10, chapter 19. So, door. Okay, let's talk a little bit about it. It tends to be a gateway to something new. And I guess you could say spiritually or symbolically, it is similar to a bridge. But if we were to look at a bridge, both bridge and a door are these gateways to something new. A bridge normally references one's own effort, and it's a little bit risky and it's gradual because you're taking quite a lot of time to cross this bridge. And it's something that we see like in the Bifrost, there's this rainbow bridge in Norse mythology. We'll be talking about that a little bit later because rainbows also pop up in this amazing chapter. Whereas with a door, it's not your own effort, it's someone else aiding you. It's not that risky. It's less risky because you're not going to fall. People fall off bridges. You could get a door slammed in your face, but there is more of this immediate, like once you open the door, you're in heaven. It's not like, it was the staircase to heaven where it was this long gradual climb. It was almost like with Jesus being the door, immediately he's in there. So like I say, door and there's Jesus. Now, what I want to do is not shy away from a holistic looking at these scriptures. So I'm going to mention psychedelics. And the reason why I'm bringing up psychedelics is because people have taken psychedelics and other drugs and they have experienced spiritual instances. In fact, there was this book written called The Doors of Perception by a guy called Aldous Huxley. And he also wrote a book called Heaven and Hell. So, doors, and we're looking at heaven. It was quite interesting how that was coming in. And what they tend to talk about, how people who take these psychedelics tend to have these visual experiences or encounters with entities. They have these altered perceptions of reality where there are emotional and spiritual components, and they tend to have these post-experience insights and transformations. And these are psychedelics like DMT and other kind of things. Of course, there was a rock band literally called The Doors. They had the song, Break On Through to this other side. But a little bit of a cautionary tale, Jim Morrison, the leader of The Doors, he did die at the age of 27. And of course, drugs are very, very dangerous and you don't want to do them unless you have proper medical assistance by your side. But it is an interesting thing how, and we'll see later with like spiritual experiences in other cultures, drugs can sometimes assist with getting there. From a Christian point of view, though, it's kind of like you don't need the drugs because you don't need the drugs to be the door. You need Jesus to be your door, and that's how we're going to experience it. And I guess both The Doors, the rock band, and Huxley, who wrote that book, The Doors of Perception, were getting it from a quote by a person called William Blake, who is one of the great poets, a little bit esoteric. We will be coming to him in later videos because he actually created a lot of art on the book of Revelation. So he's an interesting character for us, but he wrote the following. He says, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. And of course, this was in a poem called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. So heaven, doors, it's interesting how it's kind of like all connected here. And that's an album cover of the rock band. My dad was a big fan of them, so I grew up listening to The Doors. Now, the next part we have is this thing where we're hearing about a voice as of a trumpet speaking. And there's a lot of Bible verses, so I had to make the fonts a little bit smaller, but we've got a part here in Exodus, which says, on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. And I love this verse as well because, again, I know I'm always skipping ahead, but in Revelations 4, we're going to see about this throne. There's going to be thunder and lightning around it. So again, this theme from Exodus is coming forth. We've also got 1 Thessalonians where it says, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpets of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. We also have 1 Corinthians saying, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed. And again, this is a theme that we're going to see later on in Revelations, where when there's this final judgment, the dead will come back, we will be judged, and we will be sorted, kind of like the righteous and the non-righteous. We also see in Matthew 24 this idea of the trumpet, and he'll send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. Also got Hebrews 12, and that the sound of a trumpet and a voice, whose words made the hearers beg, that no further message be spoken to them. And Zechariah 9:14, then the Lord will appear over them, and his arrow will go forth like lightning. The Lord God will sound the trumpet and will march forth in the whirlwinds of the south. So we've got this whole thing, this archangel blowing this trumpet, and it's kind of associated with the voice of God. So let's look at the trumpet's meaning. It's a call to action. It's this awakening. It's like getting into a higher state. And we're seeing that now with John. He's encountering this angel, his consciousness is rising, but it's this announcement, this change in state. It can also be associated with a warning or a judgment, also a celebration and a victory, but at all times the trumpet has this divine presence and comes with it this authority and power. And then towards the end of verse 1, we hear this thing of, come to pass. Now, come to pass hereafter, it's this idea that heaven is beyond time. So when John enters it, he's going to be able to see the future. And this mirrors the other prophets who also get to see the end times. Daniel was one as well, who, when he went up into heaven, he was also able to see the future, what was going to happen. So John is going to get a glimpse of the things to come. And when we put this into the AI generator, we get this really cool image of time and being able to see into the future. Now, coming up to verse 2, we read, straightway I was in the Spirit, and behold, there was a throne in heaven, and one sitting upon the throne. Now, I want to just talk maybe straight away about the word straightway, because it's linking up with verse 1, where we hear about the door, and it's immediate. So it's like straight away, John, from the physical realm into the spiritual realm. And we're seeing this thing straight away. I was in the Spirit. So in the Spirit, he's transcended. He's moved from this physical state to the spiritual state. And interestingly, there is a verse in 2 Corinthians where Paul says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things that no one is permitted to tell. Like I say, 2 Corinthians 12 verse 13. And it's this out of body experience because we're transcending from the physical realm to the spiritual realm, to be in heaven, to be in paradise, to kind of get these revelations, hence the name of the book. Now, this isn't something that is only associated with Christianity. For those of you who've seen the movie, Spirited Away, you see that in other cultures, they have this idea of transcending from a physical to spiritual state. In fact, if we were to look at a list, there is a very, very long list. The native North Americans have these things called vision quests. In India, the yogis have something called moksha. The Buddhists have these nirvana meditations. In Islam, the Sufis have this thing called sama. In Judaism, there's the Kabbalah. The ancient Greeks had the Oracle of Delphi. There's various accounts of this happening in African traditional religions. There's the Siberian shamans that have their trances. The South Americans have these ayahuasca ceremonies. So there is a lot of the spiritual experiences that we do see in other cultures. And that's why sometimes, when science or, the secular world is like, oh, this stuff doesn't happen. Just look at the empirical data, it's happening all around the world. So there must be some sort of truth to it. But what we're interested in is not necessarily the fact that they've transcended. What happens in the state of transcendence? What is John seeing? And he says, and behold, there was a throne set in heaven and one sitting upon the throne. Now, this is not unique to Revelations. There are visions of the throne in the Bible. And the very first instance is we see it with regards to this prophet called Micaiah. He says, I saw the Lord sitting on his throne with all the multitudes of heaven standing around him on his right and on his left. Now, this is the very, very first time that the Bible is talking about a prophet seeing into heaven or seeing God sitting on a throne. And it's interesting how we're going to see this multitudes of the heaven is something that we're going to pick up in Revelations. So this is coming from 1 Kings chapter 22, verse 19, which means it's 9th century BC. So it's almost like 3,000 years ago. And it's like I say, it's the first time the Bible is mentioning someone seeing God sitting on his throne in heaven. Of course, there will be other instances. Micaiah is not the first one. There's also Isaiah 6. Isaiah 6, there's so many references on Isaiah 6, but in Psalms 47, Matthew 25, Hebrews 12, and then we're not going to go too much into these books just because they're not biblical, but there is a lot of other religious writing from Enoch, Baruch, the Testaments of Levi, that also talk to this idea of seeing God in his throne in heaven. Now, the throne meaning, I think it's a little bit obvious for us, so we don't have to go into too much time here, this idea of authority, power, responsibility, and judgment. So we go into MidJourney, and these are some of the images of the throne in heaven. Of course, the previous image didn't have God sitting on it, so this was this image of God sitting on the throne. And interestingly enough, we just put that one in there, and the AI knew that there had to be some multitudes of heaven around it. That wasn't something that I specifically prompted for. So anyway, this is verse 2. Now we're going to get a little bit more of a description. It says, and he that sat was to look upon like a jasper stone and a sardius, and there was a rainbow round about the throne like an emerald to look upon. Now I want to look at this thing called the jasper stone and the sardius. So create an image generation just to see like what does this thing look like. But for me, it was more interesting not what it looked like, but what it meant, because we see in Exodus 28, they talk about this breastplate of the high priest, and they had these 12 stones. And the sardius was the first stone, sometimes associated with Reuben, the firstborn, and jasper was the last stone, sometimes associated with Benjamin, the youngest child in the tribes of Israel. And so we've got these two stones that represent basically the first and the last, which kind of goes in with our whole theme of the Alpha and the Omega, which we learnt about in Revelations 1 verses 8. Now, in ancient cultures, the jasper sometimes represents protection, the sardius represents afterlife, and again, so what? We're getting some protection from the afterlife. This mirrors the theme that we won't experience the second death, and that was spoken about in Revelations 2:11. So wonderful how much imagery and meaning we can get from these stones, and it's the reason why John is, referencing these ones. We will also see them later on in Revelations as they'll be foundational stones for the New Jerusalem. But then there's the rainbow, and I did have a lot of fun creating this image over here. There was a rainbow round about the throne, which you don't really see in all the other images. Like the rainbow, like you actually have to specifically tell the AI to draw in this rainbow. And the interesting thing with the rainbow is that we do see it in the Bible. Okay, there's the famous case of Noah, the symbol of the covenant after the flood in Genesis 9 verse 12. But Ezekiel, it's fascinating. You read the book of Revelations and you read Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, like there's a lot of similarities. And we're going to see in Ezekiel that he also sees the rainbow in his vision of heaven. And later in Revelations chapter 10, we're going to come across an angel who's got a sort of rainbow crown. Now, what does the rainbow mean? Well, in some places, it's associated as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realm. This is continuing that theme of the door. We've got the rainbow, we've got the bridge. And like I said, in Norse mythology, There's this idea of the Bifrost, which connects Midgard, which is the physical realm, with Asgard, which is the spiritual realm. And this bridge is colored like a rainbow. We also see it in Iris's path in Greek mythology, and Iris was the messenger of the gods. Again, connecting the gods to the humans. And again, we see it, there's the bow of Vishnu in Hinduism, and there's like a lot of instances of it. I think even in some of the Asian religions, we have the two dragons, a red and a blue dragon, kind of coming together and forming a rainbow. And it's this whole idea of transition, wholeness, and union. And it's also a symbol of peace, hope, and mercy. So it's a very beautiful image that we come across. Then there's also this, the rainbow looking like an emerald to gaze upon. And the emerald, we do find it in the Bible. Again, it's one of the breaststones in the high priest. Again, it's in Ezekiel, this time a little bit later in 27 and 28. And again, we do see it later in Revelations as being one of those foundational stones. The emerald's meaning, it's got multiple meanings. In Egypt, it meant renewal. The Roman sword is a symbol of love. The Greek sword is a symbol of truth. In India, it was a symbol of unity. But universally, it is seen as a symbol of wealth. Now, what we're going to do is move on to verse 4, and we say, "And round about the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, arrayed in white garments, and on their heads crowns of gold." So 24 of these elders. So let's look, what does this number 24 have to mean? Well, the fact that they're sitting on thrones, they're elders, and they're wearing crowns, to me, this all points towards this idea of governance. And we do see this, that King David organized the priests into 24 divisions. This was his governing structure. And I think it's just by coincidence that it's in 1 Chronicles chapter 24. But the other idea of looking at it is that, well, maybe the number 12 is more of a symbolic of governance. And we're seeing the 12 tribes of Israel, which we've already been referenced before with the jasper stones, and the 12 apostles. And we're going to see some other linkage to the apostles a little bit later on. So it's the 12 tribes, it's the 12 apostles. 12 plus 12, quick maths, is number 24. Now we also see this idea of the white garments, and this is something that you're going to see throughout Revelations, this concept of being white. But it does make a reference to this Bible verse that says, "Let your garments be always white," and that is coming from Ecclesiastes 9 verses 8. This was a fun image. We're now at verse 5. It says, "And out of the throne proceeds lightnings and voices and thunder, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God." So this one, we got a throne and we got thunder and lightning coming out of it. This one, we wanted to emphasize more the fire and the lamps. And I must say, they did start getting a little bit scary. Like, you wouldn't expect heaven to kind of, like, if you rocked up to heaven and you saw this, you might have thought, ooh, did I take a wrong turn? Am I maybe not more in hell than in heaven? Because it is a little bit scary, especially that one. This is, again, it's got the lightning, it's got the thunder, it's got the fire lamps. But again, it's just, it was a very interesting one to come across. But let's talk about lightning and thunder, because we've got some other Bible verses. I mean, there's this one. "On the morning of the 3rd day, there was thunder and lightning, as well as a thick cloud on the mountain, and a blast of a trumpet so loud that all the people who were in the camp trembled. Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God." And remember, we were reading this a little bit earlier in the video. It's Exodus 19:16, this idea of there being, thunder and lightning around God. And of course, in this famous verse, "He unleashes his lightning beneath the whole heaven and sends it to the ends of the earth. After that comes the sound of his roar. He thunders with his majestic voice." And this is Job 37. So again, lightning, thunder, it seems to be, this is the presence of God. So lightning and thunder, the voice of thy thunder was in the heaven, the lightning lightened the world, the earth trembled and shook. Psalm 77 verse 18. And we'll see multiple times in Revelations this idea of thunder coming about. What does it mean? God's power, God's presence, God's judgment. And even in other cultures, it's kind of seen as like the voice of the gods. So in Norse mythology, you've got Thor, he's the god of thunder. In Greek mythology, one of the big gods is Zeus, and he's got his whole lightning bolt. And I couldn't resist it. I had to do it. I had to make a little image of Thor versus Zeus, but that's just me messing around a little bit more. Let's rather talk about Revelations verse 5 and focus in on the 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Now, these 7 spirits of God, we have looked at this earlier in Revelations. It is something that we speak about in Revelations chapter 1. And just a very quick recap, some of the big numbers that are very special in Christianity is this number of 7, which means perfection. I've written a lot more about it in the Revelation Decoded book, where we go into a lot more detail about what is 7 and its mathematical properties. We've looked at 12 already as this idea of being governance, the 12 tribes and the 12 apostles. And then another very big number in Christianity is the number of 40, which represents a trial. I think there was 40 days and 40 nights of reign in Noah. There was 40 years of wandering in the desert for Exodus. And of course, Jesus spent 40 days also in the desert before, the tempting of the Satan. So 40, 12, 7, these are the big numbers. And we're seeing here the 7 lamps of fire representing the 7 spirits of God. Put that into the AI image generator. Wasn't what I was looking for, but it did look cool, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. And this was maybe more of an idea of the 7 lamps of fire burning. It does look a bit like, something you'd see in a fantasy novel, but I kind of like this symbolic thing here where we had 7 lamps kind of portrayed like this. So thought that image looked a lot cooler. Going up to verse 6, it says, "And before the throne, as it were, a sea of glass like a crystal." And let's maybe stop there before we go into the other part. But I'm just thinking, it's like we've just had a rainbow. We've just had lightning, thunder, fire, and now we've got a sea of glass. It's like, what's happening here? There is so much imagery. Interestingly, in 1 Kings 7:23, there is this mention of a sea in the same context of what Revelations is talking about here. It's not a sea as in this, vast ocean that you sail your ships on. Rather, the mention of a sea, it's this basin that we find in temples and might be before the Lord. And it's this idea that the priests would go and they would wash themselves in this basin, and it was normally it was so big that it was referred to as a sea. Now we do see in the rest of this verse, it says, "And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne, 4 living creatures full of eyes before and behind." And Ezekiel 1:22 and 26 says, "Over the heads of the living creatures there was the likeness of an expanse shining like an awe-inspiring crystal spread above their heads, and above the expanse over their heads there was the likeness of a throne in the appearance like a sapphire, and seated above the likeness of the throne was a likeness with a human appearance." Now, not only are we getting this crystal from Ezekiel, but we're also seeing, we've got the throne in Ezekiel, but we're also getting this idea of these living creatures. Before we jump into the living creatures, let's have a few images of the sea of glass like crystal. That's what I put it in directly. However, after reading through, this idea of it being in a temple, I was able to tailor the image and create something more that looked like this. But let's talk about these living creatures, and I think maybe the best way of doing it is let's just get everything out here. So we said, "And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne, 4 living creatures full of eyes before and behind. And the first creature was like a lion, and the second creature like a calf." Some translations use the word ox. We've got calf. "And the third creature had a face as of a man, and the fourth creature was like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures, having each one of them 6 wings, are full of eyes round about and within, and they have no rest day and night, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God, the Almighty, which was and which is to come." Now, I wanted to get all three of these verses out here because we've got these four creatures now, and it's like, what's happening? So there's four of them. They've got eyes everywhere. The one looks like a lion, the one's like a calf, the one's like a man, the one's like an eagle. They've got 6 wings, like I say, and even the wings are all covered in eyes, and they're saying, holy, 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 that which is to come. So let's break this down. Okay, we have the key points. There's 4 of them: lion, calf, man, eagle. 6 wings, full of eyes, and they say, holy, holy, holy. Now, coming back to Ezekiel 10:12, we read the following passage. It says, their entire bodies, including their backs, their hands, and their wings, were completely full of eyes, as were their 4 wheels. I heard the wheels being called the whirling wheels. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, the second the face of a human being, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. Now, it's not exact. It's not like, oh, John read Ezekiel and was like, I'm just going to copy what I've read, because of course this is 6th century BC. Revelation is in the AD, and it's not like, oh, he just copied it, word for word, because for one, these ones don't have wheels, and the one's got a face of a cherub, where this one has got the face of a calf. So it's not exactly the same. There's the wheels are different, one of the faces are different, and I think these ones, they've got like 4 faces each. So it's not the same, but you got to admit it's very similar. It really, really is very similar. Or how about this? We've got 4 of them, we've got the 6 wings, we've got holy, holy, holy. We read Isaiah 6:1 verse 3, and it says, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And I mean, wow, here we've got, not only do they also have the 6 wings, but they're saying the exact same thing. And this is, 8th century BC. So it is really, really interesting to see these type of similarities. But there's one other Bible verse I want to talk about, and this one's maybe doesn't have the strongest connection, probably isn't connected at all, so I might get in trouble with some theologians, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention just because there was some similarities. And this is Daniel 7, chapter 7, verses 2-4, and it says, Daniel said, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle, and I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground, so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. Now, Daniel's 6th century BC, and it's just fascinating. We've got lion, eagle, human, and it's like 3 out of 4 again, just like Ezekiel. Of course, these ones are referred to as beasts coming out of the sea. Again, later on in Revelations, we're going to see beasts coming out of the sea, more of the bad guys. These living creatures, they're kind of like the good guys. I did put it through the image generation, and the AI does struggle to do the multiple eyes. It can't do that multiple eyes, and I think it's because it's been trained in such a way that it has to look like something in order for it to get past. So I think the AI refused to do the multiple eye thing, but this was one of the images that we got. It's kind of like a lion angel. I don't know, it looks pretty cool. And then this one was like, I don't know, what's that, like a griffin type of thing. You can see the AI really, really struggled to do this imagery of 6 wings and having eyes everywhere and all that kind of stuff. But what do these things mean? I think let's skip the images and let's jump straight into the interpretation. And there are some theories. So theory number 1 is that the 4 creatures represent the 4 gospels. So the man kind of represents the Gospel of Matthew, which focuses on Jesus' genealogy. It's like Jesus was son of this person, going all the way up to like David and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the lion, which is with Mark's gospel, because it starts off with, in the wilderness. I think it was, John the Baptist and all that kind of stuff. So the lion and the wilderness. The calf was like Luke, because Luke focuses a lot on the sacrifice of Jesus, and the eagle is connected with John because John talks a lot about the divinity of Christ, even starting off by saying, the word was with God in the beginning, and all that kind of stuff. So there's this theory that the four creatures refer to the four gospels. The other theory is that the four creatures represent four aspects of Christ. The lion represents that Christ is king. The calf represents that Christ is a servant. The man represents that Christ was a man. And the eagle, the fact that it flies up, it kind of like lives in heaven. So the eagle is symbolic of being the divine. So that's quite a nice way of looking at it. Like I say, these are theories. There might even be a couple more out of them. Then this idea of being full of eyes, the meaning behind this is that you've reached total consciousness, you're fully aware, and you've reached the state of all-seeing, all-knowing. So it's actually kind of good to be covered in eyes, although, yeah, you might have to buy a lot of pair of glasses if your eyesight's not that great. But yeah, you've got all these eyes. It's the idea that you've reached total consciousness. And yeah, I think we've kind of finished the craziest parts of this chapter. So just coming down now, it says, "And when the living creatures shall give glory and honor and thanks to him that sitteth on the throne, to him that liveth forever and ever." I mean, there's many Bible verses and Psalms that kind of mirror this giving thanks, but we see it in Chronicles, we see it in Timothy, we see it in Romans. Coming up to the next verse 10, it says, "And the 24 elders shall fall down before him that sitteth on the throne, and shall worship him that liveth forever and ever, and shall cast down their crowns before the throne, saying," and just, I guess, this quick little note on casting down their crowns, it's this idea that, they're giving their authority to God. It's this view of, Jesus being the King of kings. So it's almost like these 24 kings are taking off their crowns and saying, "You know what, God, you are the King of kings." So it's quite a nice little, reference to that. Of course, King of Kings is something that we're going to come across again in Revelations a little bit later. But what do we hear them saying? Going to verse 11, "Worthy art thou, our Lord, our God, to receive the glory and honor and power, for thou didst create all things, and because of thy will they were created and were." Sorry, I messed that one up. It says, let's start from the beginning. "Worthy art thou, our Lord and our God, to receive the glory and the honor and the power, for thou didst create all things, and because of thy will they were and were created." And it's didst, which is, sorry, I didn't think I said didn't. The King James Version, sometimes a little bit of a tongue twister. But what I found interesting with this is that it kind of reminded me of Colossians 1:15 verse 20. So this idea that, all things were created because of thy will, they were and were created. Now keep that in mind going through Colossians 1:15 verse 20, and we're going to be ending very quickly after this. But check this out. It says, now this is Paul talking about Jesus. He says, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him." I mean, we've just read about these 24 elders, putting down their crown to the throne, and here we're seeing all the authorities, and it's connecting with this idea of being created. And it says, "And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent." Firstborn from the dead, that's coming from an earlier verse in Revelations. "For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross." And a little bit of a spoiler alert, in Revelations 5, we're going to be introduced to the Lamb that was slain. So Colossians 1:15 verse 20 and Revelations, there's just so much in it. But now what we're going to do is, because that does end off our text, we're going to try create a series of final images for what does heaven look like. So we've got God sitting on the throne, we've got jaspers, we've got rainbows, we've got 24 elders in white, we've got lightning and thunder, we've got 7 lamps of fire, we've got a sea of glass like crystals, we've got 4 living creatures. It's like, okay, what images are we going to get? And I put it in, and the AI was unable to incorporate all of it, but these were some of the things it did. I mean, that first image, I don't know why there's all those little cute puppies and animals everywhere. It looks a little bit like a zoo, but it was quite cool to see the rainbow coming up in that bottom corner kind of one. The next set, feel free to pause if you want to take a longer look at any of these. I mean, that bottom right one, also, it's got like, I said, you know, the animals, it made a lot of lions in that one there. We have this one here as well. Here they actually changed the color of the lions to mimic the rainbow, so I thought that was quite interesting. And then I kind of like this one a lot. This one I think was one of my favorite ones. It didn't incorporate everything, didn't incorporate the lamps and that, but it kind of had the elders, it kind of had, you know, the light, probably it's missing fire. Like I say, it was difficult to incorporate everything into it. And then I did have a little bit of fun just to end off. I kind of, added a few more tags of styling to kind of get this image over here, which I did like because it kind of brought the rainbow and the lightning and a little bit of, all the other things, but very, very difficult to create an image that had all of this. And even when I looked online to see art pieces that try to encapsulate all of the things that we're seeing here, there weren't any that I felt that really captured everything. There were some that did aspects, but again, nothing that kind of had all the elements in it. Anyway, we're going to end off the video here. Like I say, coming up in Revelations 5, we're going to be looking at the Lamb. And it's also interesting, it's got 7 horns, it's got 7 eyes. So make sure you check that one out. As always, thanks for watching. I'm MJ from Bible Intelligence, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.